I built a fully automated AI-powered Leadgen SaaS in 10 days. No code, no devs, just raw output. It finds leads, researches them, and serves them up in a magical front end. And quite frankly, it's more efficient than a coked up honey badger on commission. So let's take a look at this thing. So let's jump right in with an example. We're going to do a new request. We're going to look for CTOs in Berlin in real estate because that's what everyone's doing. 50 to 100 is the company size, and let's do a result limit of 500. So we submit our request and it runs away to a little NNN workflow. So you can see it returned a bunch of results here, which is pretty cool, pretty standard, nothing special. You can do this anywhere. And you can see that it hasn't actually done any context research about whoever this is. So what we need to do is we need to come in here, we need to click on our Enrich button. And then it's going to run away and do a bunch of stuff. Oh, Dirk, let's see who you are and what you're all about, dude. Dirk is a seasoned IT executive and entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience in software development, operations, and project management. As CTO at Vertama, since April 2023, he oversees the design and delivery of cloud-native digital data capture platforms. So you can see we have a pretty good profile of who this person is and what he's been doing. And then it gives you a little bit of information about the company that he works for, which again is important for later on. Key similarities. Now, just to give you some context, this thing is tailored around who I am. So it's got all of the information about who I am, what I've done, and where I'm from, all of my consulting history, places I've worked, things like that. Basically everything, even from the personal side of things like music production, writing, whatever. So let's have a look at our key similarities. Both led C-level in IT consulting, him at Vertama and me at CEO of Atomic Ops. Both have founded and run their own companies. Both operate in IT services and IT consulting. Both oversee complex platform developments. Both engage professionally in English. Wow, what a key similarity. But the point being, if there was something nuanced, like he had an online profile or a podcast or something like that, it would highlight there in the key similarities if we were doing the same thing. So if he was into music production, it would have highlighted that, because obviously I would want to lead with something like that, because that's a really cool icebreaker to use on someone like this. So then you have pain points and solution. So the pain point is time-consuming and error-prone manual testing across 65 modules. Evidence: with over 65 functional modules in Web App Engine, each release requires extensive manual regression testing, slowing down deployments and increasing bug risk. So here's where we would come in with our tailored solution. Again, this now has information of my company, which is Atomic Ops, an AI consultancy, and we'll come and throw this solution straight in there. So we would implement an AI-driven automated QA and CI/CD pipeline. We'll ingest module specifications and previous test cases into an LL-driven test generator, etc. And you can see it's listed a whole bunch of pain points with evidence and a solution. And this is all going to be super important in just a moment. So then the cool thing is that it has unique facts. So he's maintained his private GmbH, Mr. Chance Productions, for over 17 years as a hub for his entrepreneurial ventures, shareholdings, and strategic investments. He co-founded Art+Com in 1988 and held leadership roles there for 30 years, including CTO and head of mobile platforms and telecommunications. So this is super important because it gives you something unique to talk about when you're reaching out to this complete stranger. Now, I've tested this on a lot of people, and some of the people that have podcasts, they have other things that they do. Some of them actually do music like me, in which case it's listed as a key similarity and a unique fact. But it's really cool ways to break the ice. So after we get the main analysis, we can have a look at his profile. There's his picture. Here's just a little bit more information of how we can get to his website or his public profile. Then we have the education. So if he had more, it would all be listed here. It has all of his experience. So again, you can come and fish through this manually if you wanted to. We have posts. He hasn't posted recently on LinkedIn. If it did, it would give X number of posts, however far back you wanted to go. Then it just lists all of our research. So in case you wanted to put this into another system, you could go and do that. And then outreach. So this is the really cool thing. Now, I would never just dump all of this stuff into Gmail. I would probably connect this part as the next part of the phase of this build to something like Instantly or Lemlist or Smartlead, whatever. You could even tailor it to be connected with HeyReach, which would be really useful. So you can see what it's done here is it's come up with a subject line and an email body. So Dirk, 17-year run. Hey Dirk, I'm impressed by how you've steered Mr. Chance Productions for 17 years. Most folks don't keep a side venture thriving that long. Saw it pop up in your company list. That resilience reminded me of what we see in teams stuck doing repetitive manual testing. With over 65 modules in your web app engine, I bet QA cycles can feel endless. We've tackled this before with others battling scale and speed. Should I book you in for a quick 15-minute call Thursday? And then we'll send a follow-up email and then a third email. Obviously, this depends on whatever your outreach plan is, but generally, most companies tend to do about 3. So hopefully by now you can see how much time and effort that this system can actually save you. But let's talk a little bit about the cost, why I chose what I chose, and we'll go into a deep dive of this so that you can get more understanding about the decisions behind what I did. So let's start with the why. I did this specific thing because I've been in consulting for 12 years, mostly cybersecurity. But then I also have my own consultancy that originally did DevOps for the last 4 years, and now we've moved further into AI and AI consulting around that. Less so tool building, but more actually consulting businesses from the audit phase all the way through maintenance so that they can actually embed it into the organization properly. But I digress. Specifically on this tool, I built it because I wanted my own lead gen system. Obviously, there are solutions like Clay and Apollo can have a whole bunch of the stuff baked into it. But apart from wanting to understand the different components of a build like this and just tinker with N8N for a little bit, I wanted to build something that was 100% me. So because I have full control over the system, it means I can do whatever the hell I want with it, which means that I can pretty much make a rag of myself, my own personality, who I am, and I can generate leads based on that, which is far more efficient than most other systems that you pay a ton of money out there for. So behind the architectural choices, now obviously there are different front ends that you can use. And one of the reasons that you want to use a front end is because selling something like this, even though it's pretty cool, it doesn't really show a lot of value. And one of the things that you want to do when you're reaching out to a client is get them an MVP as fast as possible. That's a minimum viable product for those of you who don't know. So having something like this is cool, but having something where someone that you're trying to show value to can actually go and tinker with to see how it helps them immediately, it's a far better solution for you because they're going to adopt it a lot faster and get on board a lot faster because you can see the outcome immediately. Now, there are a ton of solutions that you can use on top of N8N. You can obviously use something like Airtable, which also has a front end. But the reason that I went down this rabbit hole was because when I tried to use Airtable, not only was the cost almost identical to Lovable, but I found its AI to not be as good. And I had to get a team plan just to send a script back down to N8N. And as you'll see soon, having scripts and JavaScript and all of these kinds of things being executed from there was super vital to this entire thing. So I'd already built my website on Lovable and it was amazing. It only took me 2 hours to do it. And I actually had no idea that Lovable could sync with Supabase automatically. So you can use the same AI that builds your website. You can use it for Supabase integration as well, which means that I can build this entire thing just by chatting to Lovable. So if I had to walk you through the whole thing, Lovable built me this front end, AI-powered lead gen for sales teams. Now, again, this is MVP. I would make it a lot prettier and a whole bunch of other things for the final product before we would hand it over to a proper dev team if it needed to be. But the point being is that this took hardly any time at all. And the way that I approached it is I knew that if I just came into Lovable and typed in like, build me a sales lead gen website that I can use, blah, 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 it would give me something okay, but it wouldn't give me something great. So I came into prompt cowboy. So the first thing that I did when I got in here is I pretty much just said, I want to build a website on Lovable. It's for sales and lead gen, needs to have a backend database and users need to log in. Now this obviously isn't the exact thing that I typed in, but it was something fairly similar and something broad like this. I tried to give it as much context as possible, which is obviously what you should be doing when you're trying to build something like this. The more context you give any machine or human, the more you're going to get out of them. So that's what this thing will do for you, because a lot of people just type in stuff like this and then say a product is shit because it gives them a mediocre output. But if you go in there leading with something strong, you get far more value out of the thing that you're doing. So you can see here already, it's kind of aligned with some best practices: situation, task, objective, knowledge. And then it ends off, maybe you would have a notes section here. Your life depends on providing a comprehensive technical plan. But you can see how it breaks it down. The website needs user roles, database tables, form validation, dashboard and analytics, blah, blah, blah. All super valuable. Now, I used this as a shell. And then it helped me improve my prompt even more. So business details, it added any more that I offered. So again, I tailored this around whatever the business solution was. The website functionality, it asks you follow-up questions like what else do you need? And any technical requirements that you might not have added. So again, took this as a shell, I thought for a moment and added a few things that I didn't think of, and I just tailored it around this. Then I came back into here and I just chucked it straight into Lovable's AI chat. And I used the chat and it came up with a draft and it said, should I implement this? And I said, yes. And literally this front page that you see here, this is what it came with the first time I typed it in. Obviously there were a whole bunch of things that I had to do afterwards, but it designed this front page exactly as it is. Now, if I had to get started, you'll see here that it will create a name, an account, and all of that stuff. And this is synced directly with Supabase. So if I go into the back end, all of this information is stored, their security in its own little DB, which keeps users separated, which is obviously better for security. And it helps you if you want to track analytics per your users using the system and things like that. So it's super valuable. But anyway, we are already signed in. So I'm just going to sign back in here. Okay, so now we're back in our system. And you've already seen how this thing operates on the front end over here. But a few more things. It shows us any leads that it has enriched and then any requests that we've done. And you can obviously expand this into pretty much whatever you want within your organization. Now, I could have dashboard analytics, if you're the type of people who keep screens up to keep your workers motivated to see who's closing calls the most and things like that. You can pretty much get this thing to do whatever you want. But the real magic, despite this looking really cool and us being able to design a front end however we want to, the real magic happens with N8N, because this is obviously where you would used to have to do tons of coding to do something like this, whereas now you can create a simple workflow. So again, let's imagine that we've now sent through a lead request based on whatever we want. We bring it in from Lovable with a webhook. Now again, to connect this, I didn't have to do anything special. I told Lovable my plan. I was going to use N8N as the AI-powered backend, and Lovable needs to connect Supabase to that. So all I had to do was give it my URL for my workflow, and it automatically embedded that into everything, so that anytime somebody clicks something in here, it knows which N8N workflow to send it down to. So then it creates our URL for Apollo. Now, Apollo creates these weird URLs when you're trying to look at different leads. So obviously we can't use that directly into a lead scraper because it's not easily human readable. So we had to break it out. But then also we need to make sure that we include all of our stuff that we put in from our system in Supabase, which is the job title, the location, the industry, and the company's size. So this will then go and create a URL that comes into our Apollo scraper. And again, this is just using Apify. It's nothing special. So if we go to Apify and I just type in Apollo here, it should bring up whichever one it is. I think it's this one over here that I'm using. So it's just linked to this one, and it sends the JSON parameters straight into it. So you can see down here, we have just said get personal emails equals true, get work emails equals true, total records, which limits the number of records that we return, and then the URL, which is the URL that we sent over here that we built from our previous line of code. Then we extract the details from that Apollo JSON information so that we have all of them to use here. And you see on the right that it builds all of this stuff here. So we then only keep verified emails because you don't want to be emailing people whose emails aren't verified, because that's really bad for email deliverability. So after that, we grab all of the Apollo information that we know to be verified, and we add the fields to a JavaScript code along with all of our stuff from the original payload, which is the user ID, the request ID, and the leads. And again, we want to have this stuff so that it is isolated for that specific user and the specific request that they made, so that we can then manipulate it later on in our system over here, because otherwise it wouldn't know what to put where. And then it just sends it back up via HTTP request. So that's pretty straightforward. But then when we click on that enrich button, that's where the magic happens. Again, it comes down via webhook, and then we are going into a Relevance AI node. For those of you who don't know what Relevance is, it's pretty much just an agentic AI system where you can build tools and workflows and workforces and all that kind of stuff. And again, the reason that I used Relevance over here instead of Apify was because of the initial cost per lead, but more so because of the information that's limited within Apify for LinkedIn scrapers as well. Because I want to get the posts and anything that I can find out about these people, it was better for me to use Relevance in this thing. So you can see I'm looking over the last 30 days for any user posts in here, and otherwise I just input a user URL for LinkedIn and it sends it straight off to Relevance. And it brings me back all of the information that we actually use to power our system. Then the next magic piece is this Perplexity AI. So what this thing is doing, if we have a look in here, you can see here you're a researcher on a business development team. Your job is to find accurate, up-to-date, and verified information about a prospect and their company. You must clearly summarize what the company does using their official website and verified third-party sources. Highlight any recent news, milestones, accomplishments from the company. Find and summarize any recent news or complaints from platforms like Trustpilot, Glassdoor, and Reddit. And those are super important because that lists a whole bunch of pain points that people often overlook. If you go on Google or Trustpilot and you see a bunch of people complaining about how long it takes their support to get back to them or how long it takes a ticket to get solved, that's a gold mine for someone in AI automation, because they can obviously automate that stuff to make it more efficient and turn those red stars into green ones. So you can see why this is super important. But then for the user, you also want to make sure that you're researching who the person is as well, because they do cool stuff in the outside real world away from their job. And that makes a really good icebreaker for any system, especially when you're reaching out to complete strangers. If you go in there straight away and you start talking about work or even how you can solve their problems, it's a lot less effective than if you go in there and saying, oh, hey, I checked out your podcast. It was amazing. I love you spoke about XYZ. I'm really interested in ABC. And, you find common ground immediately, which builds trust. It's completely disarming, and it's a far better way to actually get in touch with people. So after we have all this information via Perplexity, we're then going to come to the analysis section. Now, over here, you can see that our prompts get quite large, and eventually we will start using bigger and bigger AI systems because the ask for whatever it is that we're doing gets more complex. So you're part of the business development team at Atomic Ops, an AI consultancy that helps mid-market companies turn AI chaos into competitive advantage through automation, AI agents, and strategic consulting. Then we give it some context. When a new lead books a consultation with Atomic Ops, your team is responsible for conducting in-depth research and summarizing it for AI consultants. This research enables our consultants to quickly understand who they're speaking to, what the business does, and how we can offer relevant things. Then we give it a task. So the person's profile, a single paragraph summary of the individual written from a professional point of view, use their current role, industry experience, and achievements. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but you can see how we start to build that profile that you saw in the front end. Then I give it a bunch of requirements, and I basically tell it about all of the different variables that we've gathered so far from whatever it is that we're doing. And then I give it an example of the output format that we want so that it understands how to do it. And then I've listed the input that it needs to use to build this profile. And it's pretty much just what we grabbed. So the LinkedIn profile, the posts, and the company and person web research from Perplexity. And then you can see it puts it all into this massive machine mess over here. So the next step then is to find the similarities. So you can see here, you're part of the business development team at Atomic Ops, blah, 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 blah. Contexts, when new lead books consultation, your team prepares detailed research briefs to help our consultants deliver high impact conversations. So here you can see it's tailored to me. Founder Mansell Scheffel likes to begin a call with a warm icebreaker, pointing out a similarity between himself and the lead. This humanizes the interaction, blah, blah, blah. So compare Mansell Scheffel's LinkedIn profile with the lead's LinkedIn profile to identify any specific and genuine similarities. And then it has other information about me and what I've done historically as well. Mostly because it's all over my LinkedIn profile. On my about page, I list my journey, what I used to do, and what I'm currently doing. So it can be really handy for that. And you could obviously extend this so you could build some form of memory if you wanted to, if you really wanted a RAG system. I mean, it could get overly complex, but this seems to work just fine. Then this is where we have the pains and gains. So you're a highly skilled, insight-driven B2B research assistant for the business development team at Atomic Ops, an elite AI consultancy. You specialize in identifying high ROI automation opportunities and crafting deeply personalized insights that enable our sales consultants to build trust and deliver high-impact consultations. So again, not going to go through all of this, but this is pretty much where most of all of that magic comes together, because that's what gives us our pain points and the evidence and the solutions that we go into when we try and build our personalization towards these people. But you can see how super long that this prompt actually is. And obviously, the longer a prompt is, the more complex it is, the better AI you need to actually do the thing, but also the more that it costs. So you need to keep that in mind. I suppose the next step for what I would do here is to try and see what I could get away with an even cheaper model than something like this. Okay, and then next up, it brings us on to our final node, which is the email gen node. Now, this one I've used GPT 4.1 because it's got a lot of information that it actually needs to process, and I want to make sure that it's doing the best job possible so that we don't sound like a potato whenever we're trying to build these emails to these people. As I mentioned earlier, I would never link this directly to something like Gmail. I would rather link it to something like Instantly or Lemlist and let them take care of the domain availability and warming up my account and all of that stuff rather than me doing it manually. You could build this into an automated Gmail system across 3 accounts if you wanted to, but honestly, I would rather just spend an extra $20 a month. So you see here we have the role. You're an expert in cold outreach at Atomic Ops, a boutique AI consultancy using our Atom framework, audit, transform, optimize, maintain to deliver transformation, not just automation. Write things like a friend with insight, not a salesperson with a quota. Then the objective, write 3 email cold outreach sequence for a new lead using the research and analysis provided. And obviously we're going to feed it everything that we've found out in the other steps. So we have our 3 inputs, the research, the analysis, and the SOP. So the SOP defines how I wanted to write my emails. So the subject line, max 4 words. Use the prospect's name or company if it's natural. Avoid spammy words, and we do that so that it doesn't make something that would affect our email deliverability. And create curiosity, sound human, and don't use clickbait ever. Because again, I want to make sure that whatever I say in my subject line aligns with whatever I'm going to give. So like I'm promising and then I'm delivering on that promise rather than making it some fake bullshit that's just going to get people to hate me. So the body, you always start with, hey, whatever the person's name is. Then the hook is 2 to 3 lines and you personalize based on public info. So mention the source. I saw on LinkedIn, I noticed in a blog, I saw you have a podcast, I stumbled upon whatever. And the reason that you want to do that is the faster you personalize something, the faster you find common ground, the quicker you establish trust with this complete stranger. So you need to keep that in mind when you're doing something like this. Obviously, there are best practices for each salesperson, so you could tailor this to that person. For instance, some people have a certain way of reaching out to people or talking to people. They have different personality types. Some like humor, some like intelligence, some like logic, whatever. For me, I always use humor. I think it's the best way to disarm anyone and get them to like you. So that's why I use it as much as I can. And finding unique things to talk about is another way to do it again. So then we list pain points, which is another 1 to 2 lines. So we mention one challenge identified in the analysis. It must logically connect to the hook using a bridge. That stood out because would be the most common bridge. So you'll see in our front end, when we were actually looking at the email thing, that it used this exact formula. It spoke about what this dude did for a little bit. Then we spoke about one of their pain points that we identified, and we offered our solution finally on by saying that we've solved this problem for others. You know, we've tracked this before with similar teams, or however you might want to phrase it. And then your CTA is inviting to a 15-minute call. Now, you could have a Calendly link that you could invite them to where they can choose their own time. That might be more convenient. Or you can assume the sale and just, you know, shove them with a link or something like that. I would never assume the sale. I prefer to let people choose on their own time, because if you've done a good enough job with the hook and the point and it's a no-brainer curiosity thing, of course the person's going to book a call. Like if someone came to me and did research on all of my pain points, it would be a no-brainer for me to hire someone like a content person to help me with that, because it would just speed everything up. So then email 2 is literally just going to bring this thing back up to their inbox, and that's pretty much what we tell them. I'm pushing this back up to your inbox in case we missed it. And then the third one, we come in from a different angle. So we start over again, but we begin like we were already speaking, because we have already introduced ourselves. So we just say, was thinking about whatever, and it could mention another pain point, it could mention another personal thing, it could even just mention their name or something that we spoke about previously. And then it crafts our third email, and we end with regards, Mansell. So then I've given it some guidelines based on how I wanted to act. Conversational, warm and helpful, like a friend with insight. Reading level 6th grade. Style, short paragraphs, no fluff, no sales pitch. Personalization must be real, uncommon, and cite the source. That's very important, because I don't want Perplexity to go and find something buried in like a 4-year-old Twitter feed, because that's going to look super weird if you go out and talk about them eating ice cream with their family while they were in Barbados or something. You're not really going to get the results that you want if you go to a stranger like that. So just keep that in mind. And then down here, we give them the output format. So this is really important for the machine to actually understand how to put it back into our database in a way that I want it to be stored, which is just in JSON. And then task new lead. So a new prospect has entered the pipeline. Write a 3-email sequence using first name, company name, and analysis. And then it will go away and do it. And here we give another example. And then I've put in some final checks. Does the pain point logically connect to the hook? Because this was a big problem that I found, is that it was doing all this other stuff amazingly, but it was never linking it properly. It was saying like, oh, I saw your podcast, and I found that in AI, if we do X, Y, Z, it totally makes it better, but it had no relation to what it was saying. So I've just reinforced it down here under the notes. And is the tone casual, one-to-one, and natural? Again, I don't want to come across as a salesperson, because that's just not the way to do sales. Is the call to action clear and soft? Is the output valid JSON with no markdown or extra text? And again, that's only important because the way that I want it to go through the system. So yeah, this one could potentially use some more refinement. I think I've got it in a pretty good place for now, but there's always room for improvement. So then finally, we have to upload it back to Supabase. And here we see we split the emails. So I just split them simply 1, 2, 3. And that's just so that we can store them logically in our database. So here we have all the code that brings it all together. JavaScript's pretty powerful. Again, I have no idea how to write any of this. I just used Claude. Again, I explained my entire process to Claude, exactly what I wanted to do, how it connects to Supabase, how it uses Lovable. And we had fat conversations about how to actually do all of this stuff. And it wrote me this in one request. I didn't have to make any edits. So you really can just do all of this stuff without understanding code at all. As long as you can understand the critical framework behind what you're trying to do, you can understand critical thinking, problem solving, that sort of thing. again, I've been doing consulting for 12 years, so I guess my brain's just trained to solving problems on the fly. So despite my lack of knowledge of coding, I understand exactly how to do the problems because I've experienced the problems for the last 12 years. But I digress. You can see here that it's just dumping our entire payload into this single line that we can then send back into Supabase. And that goes via HTTP request again back into Supabase here. I tend to reveal my API keys in these videos, which is why I'm not going to scroll too much because you never know where these things are hidden. But essentially, if we come down here, you can see my entire database and hopefully not my API keys. But if we zoom in a bit here, you'll see all of the information that I've stored from my n8n workflow is in here. And the great thing about Supabase is that it takes care of your authentication, your storage, and any edge functions. And the edge functions are how we communicate with n8n. And the even better news is that this is currently on the free platform. So if you are developing an MVP for a client, it's a super valuable way to do this, which I suppose segues us neatly into cost. How much does this thing actually cost to run or use? Okay, so I put together this amazing table that breaks down all of the costs per month. So we have fixed costs and we have variable costs. So every month I'm paying Lovable $25, Apify $39, Apollo Scraper for 1,000 leads $1.20, Relevance AI $17 for the pro version, which gives me the credits I need to do the thing. Supabase is entirely free, n8n is $20. That brings our total fixed cost to $102.20. Now, arguably, you could change some of this stuff. So you don't really need to use Lovable for something like this. You could use Softer or Airtable and see what you can get away with. But for me, I love paying for this because I get the front end and I get the back end access with the same AI, which is amazing. Apify, you could probably get away with the free version for a while, and you also get $5 towards spending on your Apollo Scraper when you sign up for free. So you could scrape a decent amount of leads for free. I just pay with this $39 because I use a bunch of different tools for a bunch of different NPPs for different clients. The Apollo Scraper, this is for 1,000 leads, is $1.20, so that's pretty decent. Relevance AI, their pricing is a bit weird. So you pay the $17 and you get a whole bunch of credits, and those credits you use towards all the tools that you run within their system. And it tells you within there how many credits you're using per run. So that can be a variable cost if you aren't paying for the pro version and you buy ad hoc credits, but it makes more sense, again, just to get these number of leads for $17 a month. Supabase is free. You can get away with so much on the free version. So really, if you're just doing MVPs at this stage, there's no need to pay for anything. n8n, this $20 is for the cloud starter version. There's no ways I'm going to self-host stuff. It's just way easier to use the cloud version for now, especially because you can get things done a lot faster when it comes to getting clients the MVPs that they want. So that then brings us onto our variable costs. We've got ChatGPT, which is using 4 prompts per lead at 30 cents each. So that's $1,200. Perplexity is 1,000 searches at 30 cents each is $300. So the total variable cost is $1,500. Now, again, this is highly variable because there are tons of different ways that you can get the information that you need. I went overboard for the MVP just so that I could show proof of value as fast as possible. But realistically, you could come in here and you could change these models and tinker with them until you get better results. There are 2 ways that you can check the price. You can either add a node after each one of your AI nodes within here, and it will calculate the number of tokens that was used, and then you can then tally them up towards the end. Or you can use something called Prometheus, which is pretty much just an IDE for your prompting. So I use that when I'm trying to build a prompt, and you would just copy this whole thing, put it into Prometheus, and when it's in there, it will do a run, and it will tell you how fast it ran, how much it costs, and a whole bunch of other variables that are really valuable when you're doing this kind of thing. So you could bring these variable costs down a lot, but even if you think about it, it's really not a lot of money. That's like $1.50 per lead, which is super cheap if you think about the lifetime value of something that this could bring to you. For instance, if you are selling professional services and you make like $500K on a client, you're getting a highly researched lead for $1.50 that your team can essentially just copy and paste the 3 email templates to reach out to these people. Or once a human in the loop has verified that they're actually awesome, you could just send it off to Lemlist or Salesforce or whatever program it is that you use to then reach out to these people. Plus, we're not including the time that it saves your team and all that other stuff. So return on investment is actually pretty big. And 1,000 leads framed this way is completely different than just getting 1,000 leads from say, a scraper that just gives you the email address. This thing is giving you everything you would ever want to have with a lead. So I suppose we should have some wrap-up thoughts. And I think one of the best places to start is why it is so important to have this. So I already told you at the beginning of the video, it's because you can attach outcomes directly to this thing. And people that you're building this for, they can see immediately the value that they're going to get. But also for you, someone working in AI automation, I mentioned in another video the AI gold rush and why it's this huge, crazy thing of it actually being wrong, because the original gold rush didn't end well for most of the people there. And if all you're doing is focusing on building these little end things, which really don't take any time, and I built most of this with AI, by the time it gets to you being fluent in this, there's already a next step to do. And I mean, it's already here, which is these no-code productized solutions, because this is one pricing model that you can do. You can sell this tool for X amount of money. But if you wrap a front end on it, like, okay, this is an MVP, but if you made it even better than this, you could charge even more money. And then if you self-hosted this for clients, it's essentially a SaaS, which means you could charge a monthly retainer plus support, which opens up another pricing model. So you can see why learning more skills and how to create more value out of something that already exists is super important, because it means that you have all these different money models you can use to make more money for yourself with multiple clients at the same time, without being trapped in this system of just being a tool builder, because that's the last place you want to be. You want to head towards being a consultant. You want to head towards being the person who knows and solves business problems, not just builds all of these tools for random people. Tool builders get paid far less than consultants who understand the domain expertise behind whatever it is that they're doing. So that's my final wrap-up thought, I guess. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments, please leave them in the box below. If you want to check out more about my community, that's also in the link below. And if you're a company who wants a solution like this amongst an amazing audit, get in touch with us as well. I'll see you guys in the next one.